Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Well, tonight we're going to start in the water, and then later on we're going to end up in the water, and we're going to start out with Granddad. Not anybody's granddad specifically, but Granddad the Lungfish, who died in, well, we think it was his 90s. To be honest, Granddad could have been older. He could have been over 100. He was the oldest fish in captivity, and he died here at the Shedd Aquarium in Chicago. Lungfish are native to the Mary and Burnett rivers in Queensland, Australia. They have a primitive lung and are among the few fish that can breathe air. The species has existed for nearly 400 million years, and fossils show they've remained pretty much unchanged for the last 100 million years. Granddad came to Chicago as a gift from the Sydney Zoo for the Chicago World's Fair in 1933. Here's the Fish Channel on Granddad.
The world's oldest living aquarium fish passed away on Sunday at the ripe old age of 90 years old. Some say he even lived into his mid-90s. Granddad, a lungfish who made the Shedd Aquarium in Chicago his home for 80 years after arriving in 1933. Granddad is the longest-lived fish in any zoological setting in the world. He is said to have loved his leafy greens and earthworm Wednesdays. Granddad smiled and charmed over 104 million aquarium visitors and was euthanized after the aquarium discovered signs of organ failure. Rest in peace, Granddad. Here's to you. We're raising an earthworm to you.
Hey, only on this podcast are you going to get a report from the Fish Channel. Well, from there, it seems only fitting that we move on to Irwin Eli Cohn, who died recently at 102. He's better known as Professor Irwin Corey, the world's foremost authority. What was he an authority on? Well, everything and nothing. He was a nice Jewish boy from Brooklyn who became a comedian. He moved to the East Village where he lived most of his life. He perfected his routine at clubs in the Village in New York and at the Hungry Eye in San Francisco. And his routine, possibly borrowed from either Groucho Marx or Robert Benchley, was to talk about nothing but to talk about it in an erudite fashion, thereby making him the world's foremost authority. He was a popular performer on television in the late 50s, 60s, and early 70s, and here's a little bit of his shtick.
Based on the state of inertia, developing a centrifugal force, which is used as a catalyst rather than a catalytic agent, which hastens a chain reaction and remains the same in the condition prior to its inception. This period or focal point, which is used as a tangent in that symphony of thought, in the development of ideas based on the ideology rather than to accept the dullness of dreary reality so that we can ultimately vent to our spleen, however, does not negate the necessity where we must be cognizant of the arid areas and regions beyond our control and set upon that oasis. Look to our party's platform, rest on our record, and feel secure with the knowledge that salvation is its own reward. Many of you people say, what the hell is he talking about?
He was good friends with crazy guys like Jonathan Winters. The critic Kenneth Tynan thought he was the most brilliant comedian he'd ever seen. His career suffered for two reasons. Sometimes he tended to take over the stage on television. You know, he'd do something like take control of the camera and he'd leave the host completely out of control of the show, and they didn't like that kind of stuff. The second was he was an unrepentant lefty, which got him blackballed in the 50s, and he tended to throw politics into his show. The commie stuff made network executives uncomfortable in those days. At Soupy Sale's funeral, he was given a eulogy and he went off on this tangent on Cuba and the communists. So you never knew what he was going to do. Even in his 90s, he was out panhandling in the streets of Manhattan, hitting cars up for money for Cuban charities. But as I said, he was quite popular for a time. Here he is on the Smothers Brothers show. The Smothers Brothers probably liked him because he was a lefty, or maybe they knew him from the Hungry Eye. And he starts with his trademark, however, refuting a point he hasn't yet made.
Gentlemen, the world's foremost authority, Professor Irwin Corey. However, as is customary, we generally have a question period, and there were some questions that were asked me. Here's a question. Professor, why do you wear tennis shoes? Well, that's a two-part question. First, you ask why. Well, why has been plaguing man since time immemorial. Statesmen, philosophers, educators, teachers, scientists have been asking the ultimate why. And in these few moments allocated me, it would be ludicrous on my part, for the sake of brevity, to delve into the ultimate why. Do I wear sneakers? Yes! appreciate not only understanding, but as Josef Goebbels once said, remember, wherever you go, there you are.
Irwin Corey, definitely a wacky guy. We're going to move on now to Brunhilde Pomsel, who died recently at the age of 106. She was the secretary to Josef Goebbels, possibly the last member of the inner circle of the Third Reich. Here's Matthew Bannister of the BBC4 Last Word.
Brunhilde Pomsel, who died aged 106, was probably the last surviving link to the Nazi inner circle in Germany during the Second World War. She was secretary to the party's notorious propaganda chief, Josef Goebbels. Brunhilde denied any knowledge of the Holocaust and only spoke publicly about her experiences towards the end of her life. I have probably worked with more criminals in my life than I know, but I did not know it at the time. Florian Wegensamer made a documentary about her called A German Life.
She always tried to look away. Of course, she noticed that her Jewish neighbors and the Jewish clients of her father disappeared, and she even lost contact to her close Jewish friend Eva, and she never asked why. She described Goebbels as a good-looking man, well-kept, great suits. He always had a light tan, well-groomed hands. He had a manicure done every day.
Adolf Hitler is the beggar.
She describes him as very elegant, as a gentleman. But she said when he was on the stage holding a speech, he switched in one moment into a completely different person.
He was a good actor. No other actor could have been any better at performing the transformation from a civilized, serious person into that ranting and raving, rowdy person.
She was in the bunker of the Ministry of Propaganda the last days in Berlin. She even made a white flag for the official surrender in Berlin down there. That's where she has been arrested by the Red Army and spent 5 years in prison camps all over Germany.
She was not a stupid woman.
Definitely not. Also very likable, and that's my dilemma, because I like her, but at the same time I have to despise her for what she did or what she did not do. She definitely always tried to ignore and look the other way. She tried to know as little as possible. She doesn't consider herself as guilty in any way. She never understood the big picture. Her whole perspective of life, of the world, always has been a very personal one, a very selfish one. In her story, she doesn't try to make herself look better. As many witnesses of that time who have been involved in some way show this late remorse and regret. And I always have a hard time to believe it. But she's honest. She doesn't see herself as guilty. And I think that's what makes her story interesting and reliable as well, because she has no false remorse.
Well, we're going to close tonight with Bobby Freeman, who died recently at the age of 76. And Bobby Freeman was a rock and roller, and he wrote and performed one of the iconic songs in rock and roll, which we're going to go over for a little while. Bobby Freeman was a nice African-American boy from Alameda County in California, went to Mission High School, and when he was only 17, he wrote and performed this song that went to the top 5 in the charts in 1958. He's introduced here on American Bandstand by Tony Randall, and I got to tell you, that's the most improbable thing I've seen since I saw the Chantays on Lawrence Welk. Tony and Dick Clark are talking, and then they trot Bobby out in a circus setting in a ringmaster's uniform, and he's singing to an elephant. One of the more humiliating moments in television rock and roll harkens back to Elvis singing to a basset hound. But hey, it's a great song.
Understand you brought a friend. Yes, I did. Bobby Freeman. I think you'll like him. Incidentally, I think Bobby's going to have his hands full. Ladies and gentlemen, keep your eyes wide open. Tony, thank you very much. Thank you, Dick. Sit tight for a second. Here is Mr. Bobby Freeman.
When he did that one, and it was so good that other people started covering it almost immediately. You can review some of the covers and you can decide which one you like. One of the covers was done in England by Cliff Richard and the Shadows. Cliff Richard sort of the English Elvis Presley, and the Shadows were the great instrumental group led by guitarist Hank Marvin, and you get that pre-Beatles lounge act sound. Sort of, we're not sure if rock and roll is going to catch on or not.
We have two of my Shadows and do a number that's more in our idiom. It's called Do You Want to Dance? Do you want to dance and hold my hand? Squeeze me, baby, I'm your man. Oh, baby. Do you wanna dance? Do you wanna dance under the moonlight? Squeeze and hug me all through the night, oh baby. Do you wanna dance? I'll take you. Do you wanna dance? Do you wanna dance? Do you wanna dance?
One of the things about great songs is you'll see different covers with different takes, and one of the takes was a slow version. First slow version was put together by John Phillips for the harmonies of the Mamas and the Papas.
Do you wanna dance and make romance? Come on, pretty baby, and take a chance. Hey, baby, oh, baby, do you wanna dance? Do you wanna dance? Do you wanna dance?
The most famous slow version might be the Divine Miss M. Bette Midler recorded this in 1972. She's been singing it ever since. It's one of her signature songs.
And hold my hand. Tell me you're my lover man. Oh baby, do you wanna dance? Do you want to dance with me, baby?
I'm not a special fan of the slow versions, but I got to admit that is pretty good. When I say this song is iconic, I mean iconic. It was the best number in the 1979 classic Rock and Roll High School, with rock and roll goddess PJ Soles leading the Ramones through the high school. And as a reminder, we've done Tommy Ramone's podcast.
So what do you think of my school, guys?
Boy, when you have recess, you really go all out.
Consider yourselves officially enrolled in Rock and Roll High School. The facilities are yours. Do whatever you want.
Pretty good too, but let's go to the two best covers. The runner-up for best cover is by Charles Westover from Coopersville, Michigan. You may know him better as Del Shannon, that badass of early 60s rock and roll.
Do you wanna dance with the whole hand? Tell me, baby, I'm your loving man. Oh, baby, do you wanna dance? Well, do you wanna dance? Do you wanna dance? Do you wanna dance?
That's the runner-up, but the winner is those Beach Boys. Covers were not their forte. They rarely did the best cover of a song, but in this case they did, and the ironic thing was it was one of the few songs where they let Dennis do the lead.
Do you wanna dance and hold my hand? Tell me, baby, I'm your loving man. Oh, baby, do you wanna dance?
Yeah, you got the Wrecking Crew playing on that one, and I think Glenn Campbell's in there somewhere. Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. You know, Bobby Freeman doesn't get enough credit for a 17-year-old who wrote that song. He did some other stuff like Betty Lou Got a New Pair of Shoes, but neither of those is my favorite Bobby Freeman song. My favorite is the song he did during the British invasion, the height of the Beatles, in 1964. It was co-written by a guy he met out in the Bay Area, a guy by the name of Sylvester Stewart. You might know him better when he changed his name to Sly Stone. One of the last great dance records of the era, especially with all those California surfer girls doing it on television. This is Bobby Freeman, Come On and Swim. I told you we'd come back to the water at the end of the show.
Do what you wanna, do like you wish. Come on, baby.